A slow, ominous rumble drifted across the Gulf waters, whispering into the town of Clearwater Bay. The tourists were mostly gone, the beach deserted except for a handful of locals watching the steel-colored sky turn darker by the hour. Those who grew up here knew what the change meant. Something fierce was coming. They could feel it in the sudden thickness of the air, heavy and electric, clinging to their skin. For days, weather channels had been buzzing with updates on Hurricane Beth, a storm that had already left a trail of destruction across the Caribbean. The meteorologists warned it was gathering strength, but as the storm grew closer, something about it seemed unusual. It wasn't just the wind speed or the size, it was how the storm behaved, moving at an unpredictable pace, pausing and surging as if deciding where it wanted to strike. By the time it reached Category 4 strength, evacuation orders were already in place. The streets of Clearwater Bay were in chaos. Cars clogged the roads, families packed whatever they could grab in a hurry, pets were stuffed into carriers, and a few stragglers stood defiantly in doorways, claiming they wouldn't leave their homes behind. But as the storm sirens wailed, a deep sense of dread grew. Bath was going to be different. As night fell, the first gusts of wind swept through the streets. Palms shuddered under the onslaught, their fronds bending back with each powerful surge. The town went dark quickly. The power grid had been shut down in a last-ditch effort to prevent electrical fires. Those who stayed behind could only wait in the shadows, relying on flashlights and candles, the wind's haunting whistle their only soundtrack. Around midnight, the storm surged into full force. The windows rattled with every gust, and the howling winds grew louder, reaching a relentless scream. The rain didn't come down in drops but in torrents, sheets of water hitting the windows with the sound of stones. Families huddled together, clutching each other as the walls shuddered and groaned under the weight of the wind. It was no longer a hurricane outside, it felt like a beast, a force with a will of its own, pounding and scraping at anything that dared stand in its way. Then came the first roof. One family's two-story house down by the shore lost its shingles in a few short bursts before the entire roof tore away, disappearing into the sky. Then another house. And another. The wind clawed its way through every inch it could find, pulling wood, metal, and glass, peeling back walls like paper. Inside the old lighthouse by the edge of town, the keeper, Ben Taylor, sat watching the storm from his small window. He had stayed, despite every warning, to keep the light burning as long as he could. The lighthouse had seen over a century of storms, weathering each one as the sea rose and fell. But now, watching the ocean, Ben could see waves he'd never seen before, towering and crashing with a violence that made his hands shake. He whispered a prayer under his breath, his gaze flickering to the faint, shadowy outline of the shoreline that used to be Clearwater Bay. The waves had swallowed the beach, and he knew it wouldn't be long until they crept further. Just as dawn began to break, the eye of the storm approached. A calm settled over the town, eerie and deceptive. Clearwater Bay was left in a state of suspension, caught between destruction and a sense of waiting. Families emerged from their hiding places, their eyes wide with relief and disbelief. But the lull would only last so long. Ben had watched many storms, but he knew what this meant. There was more to come. He sounded the alarm from the lighthouse, the deep, resonant tones echoing over the water and through the shattered streets. Residents who had wandered outside in their relief scrambled back to what remained of their homes, holding their loved ones close and bracing for the second wave. Then, as if waiting for that exact moment, the back half of Hurricane Beth struck. The winds came with even greater fury, and the rain lashed down in stinging sheets. Whole buildings collapsed, torn apart by gusts that hit from every direction. The lighthouse groaned under the strain, and Ben could feel the floor vibrating beneath him. When he looked out at the water, he could see that the ocean had risen even higher, now spilling over the seawall, claiming the roads and lapping at the base of the lighthouse. Just when it seemed the winds couldn't possibly blow any harder, the lighthouse shuddered as if a giant hand had slammed into it. Ben was thrown to the floor, his candle rolling away and flickering out. He crawled to the window, his heart pounding. He knew if the foundation gave way, there would be no escape. But he held on, the only thing left between the town and the raging sea. When the wind finally began to die down, and the rain eased into a relentless drizzle, Clearwater Bay lay in ruins. Houses were flattened, streets were torn open, trees uprooted, and debris scattered as far as the eye could see. Cars lay overturned, tangled in telephone wires, their headlights flickering eerily in the morning light. Ben made his way down from the lighthouse, his legs weak but his heart steady. He knew he'd stayed to do something that mattered, even if it was only to bear witness. As he walked through the destruction, he saw the resilience of his town begin to show. People were emerging from the rubble, helping each other to their feet, sharing blankets, offering shoulders. Hurricane Beth had taken much from Clearwater Bay, but as Ben looked around at the faces of his neighbors, streaked with mud and rain but determined, he knew one thing had survived, the spirit that had always defined this town.